All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jay, and I'm the host of our monthly Grace Roots Be Strong talks. Grace Roots is a Josephine County-based nonprofit organization that is focused on a number of different things we can do to help people out in recovery. And we've got a few of our board members on the line this evening to watch this monthly talk, and we have another special guest this month. We've been doing these on the second the second Thursday of each month at 7 o'clock. And so in the future, you can check us out at grace-roots.org or on Facebook, the Grace Roots Facebook page. And a special guest this evening is Brendon Kinzel. And Brendon, without further ado, please tell us your story and tell us your Be Strong story.
Okay. So everybody can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so my name is Brendon Kinzel. I am a parent mentor with the Family Nurturing Center in Medford, Oregon. And I'm a husband. I'm a father of 5 children, 4 boys and 1 girl. And as you can see behind me, I'm a big-time Raiders fan. So I'm also an addict in recovery today. And my addiction really had its toll on not only my life, the life of my family, my children, people in the community, and it affected a lot of people. So I'm gonna start in the beginning. I grew up in Southern California. I did not have a present father. My dad was struggling with his own things at that time, and was not able to be in my life at the time. He was incarcerated when I was maybe 2 years old, and I didn't meet him until I was 6 when he got out of prison in Donovan Prison in San Diego. And so there was periods of time where he was in my life. I grew up, in my mom's home, and I had an abusive stepfather that would remind me that I wasn't his child, and physically abuse my brother and I, and belittle us and tell us we weren't worth anything, and that I was just destined to be like my dad. And that was really kind of the what I was fed as a child by my stepfather, that I was just going to be my dad. I was just going to be a druggie. I was worthless. And when I didn't have much of a positive male influence in my life, in Southern California in the 1990s, I grew up kind of looking up to the things that you see on TV, the streets, the gang culture, the criminal lifestyle, movies, hip hop culture, that kind of stuff. Music really had a huge influence on me. It still does today. Today I use music as my self-care, as therapy. But when I was a child, I used music as a way to glorify and fantasize about selling drugs, committing gang violence, committing crime, and that kind of stuff. I used to, sit in my room and daydream about being the next Scarface or the next Al Capone. And I really wanted to be that. I tried really hard to be that guy. I was a follower. I just wanted to fit in. I wanted to be accepted. And so I would kind of, blend in with whatever crowd I happened to be hanging out with in that time. If it happened to be Southern gang members, then that's what I was. If it happened to be punk rockers, then that's what I was. Went to a lot of rap concerts, went to a lot of Marilyn Manson concerts. So I was kind of back and forth, really, at the time, in the 90s, people called it a poser. And that's really what I was. I just wanted to fit in. I was just trying to find a place for myself in the world. And I didn't really know how to do that. So, growing up down there, my mom moved me around a lot. I was born in Pomona. I lived in Upland and moved into Riverside and Loma Linda. Those weren't really nice areas at the time. And so, I started getting in trouble in school really young. I got my first suspension when in second grade, ditched school first time in second grade. Started hanging out with people that were much older than me, that were having influences on me. I felt accepted at the time, and my mom was scared. She didn't want her son to, grow up and kind of follow in the same footsteps as my dad, and she didn't really understand how to raise a kid like me at that time. So when I was 12 years old, my mom didn't want me listening to the Snoop Doggy Dogg cassette tape or Bone Thugs and Harmony. And I was like, how dare you take my music away from me, even though it was extremely inappropriate for a 12-year-old kid to be listening to. So I came after her with a pair of scissors. And I had been hanging out with some gang members in Palm Springs, California, North Palm Springs, which is Palm Springs is like a nice area, but in the northern section of Palm Springs, it's really kind of not a nice area. And so she got scared, sent me to Grants Pass to live with my grandma and grandpa and my dad. And I was here about 6 months. And that was the first time I tried methamphetamine. I was 12. Never done any drugs before. I think I smoked a cigarette when I was 9. But meth was the first drug I ever did. I actually didn't start smoking marijuana or drinking alcohol until I was well into my teenage years, 16, 17. And I didn't start doing any other drugs, heroin or cocaine or ecstasy or hallucinogens until I was well into my 20s. Meth was that was my escape at the time. It made me feel accepted. The drugs kind of promised me everything. I felt powerful when I had them. I felt like I could achieve anything. I felt invincible when I would get high. So I did not really continue to use meth in my younger years. My dad woke me up in the middle of the night and told me to have a nice life, and he left. And he tried to take me with him. My grandma and grandpa told him, if you take Brendon with you, my mom's name is Sylvia. My grandpa told my dad, Sylvia's going to have every law enforcement agency on you, the FBI. I mean, like my mom would have had everybody looking for my dad if he would have taken me out of the house. And so she sent me up here to live with him under the care supervision of my grandma and grandpa. So when he left, he did not take me with him. As a 13-year-old kid, I was 13 at that time. My dad wakes me up at midnight, tells me to have a nice life, and I didn't see him again until I was an adult. So I didn't understand. I personalized it. I blamed myself. What is wrong with me that he doesn't want to be in my life? And today I know that things are very, we're a lot different. As a dad today, I understand, as somebody who's experienced, what it's like to be active in substance use disorder and criminal lifestyles and things like that. I really understand it wasn't that something was wrong with me. He did love me. And he was struggling. My dad and I managed to rekindle our relationship before he passed away, after I got out of prison. And there was ups and downs, but I'm really grateful for the time that I got to have with him. So fast forward, I'm now 18 years old. My grandparents sent me back to California to live with my mom because I was stealing from them and selling cigarettes at North Middle School. And so I was too much for them to handle. And so moved back to California, and now we've moved out of Palm Springs and into this small little tiny town in San Bernardino County called Yucca Valley, which is, there's nothing there. And I was completely miserable. And so I started getting in more trouble. Started, stealing liquor from my nana and granddad's liquor cabinet so that I can go out to the dry lakes. Yeah, there's a lot of dry lake beds out there in the desert. We'd go out there partying and drinking and having a good time. And everybody was like, yeah, Brendon's got the liquor, you know, because my nan and granddad had a full bar in their house. And so that continued for a couple of years. My nana was a big enabler for me. She felt like because I didn't have an everyday present father in my life that, you know, she would try to spoil me to make up for that. So for my 6th birthday, I got a horse. You know, she would buy me a carton of cigarettes a week, take me to school, give me cigarettes, give me liquor, let me go out anytime I wanted. She was my enabler. And you know, what happened was I stole from her. I broke in and I stole her purse when I was 18 years old, and it had her dad's picture in it in her purse. The only picture of her dad that she had. Her dad died in World War II in North Africa, fighting for the British Army. My nana was born in England. She immigrated here when she was 4 years old, after the war had ended. My granddad was actually fighting in Europe against the Germans while my nana was a baby, a refugee in England, living in bomb shelters and things like that from the air raids and things like that. And so because of that, I took the only picture that she had of her dad. She told me I couldn't come back to the house. So I got into some more trouble, committed some burglaries in California, found out the police were looking for me. You know, I'm an 18-year-old kid. California has this really scary thing called 3 strikes. And so I stole a checkbook, wrote a check out to myself and cashed it and paid somebody to bring me to drive me from Yucca Valley to Grants Pass and drop me off. And so that's what happened. I came up here. I tried to move in with my grandma and grandpa, and they had their house robbed in Merlin, and so they were not allowing anybody to stay with them. So I stayed with my cousin Stephanie at the Fruitdale Trailer Park, right across from Caveman Bowling Alley, and started doing meth again. And I got this bright idea that I could do some of the same things that I had been doing in, you know, San Bernardino County, and then I had been getting away with because, you know, San Bernardino County is the largest county in the United States. Things that you do there, it takes a lot longer, really, to get busted than it does here. And I learned the hard way that the police response time in Grants Pass is a lot quicker than it is in San Bernardino. And I broke into Caveman Bowling Alley on September 11th, 2002, and stole the whole machine that you put dollar bills in to spit quarters out in the arcade. And that was actually my first time ever being arrested. And I was blown away. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I've never seen CSI stuff happen in real life. Like, they took plaster mold things of my shoe prints. They had the dog out there. There was police everywhere. They were telling me about Measure 11. I never heard of it. I didn't no idea what Measure 11 was. And Rebecca Peterson was actually my public defender in that case. And so, you know, I'd like to say that I stopped after that, but I didn't. The meth had a hold of me by now, and it was convincing me that I was invincible. And so what I did was I got out of jail right away. I had no history, so they let me out of jail. I did like 12 hours in jail, and I went to at the time, it was the Fireball gas station on F Street. It's now like a body shop or something right there on F Street. There's always like a bunch of classic cars parked out there, but at this time it was a gas station. And I threw a rock through the big bay window. They had this huge window, and I had stolen a bunch of cartons of cigarettes. And I tied my pant leg shut and filled my pants up with all these cartons of cigarettes. And you know, I was like, yeah. And then got away with that, and at the time. And so I was like, man, I can keep hitting these licks, these burglaries. And so then I went to Rogue River, still doing meth, and committed a beer run at the liquor store, and did not know that in the state of Oregon, you have to be 21 years old to go into a liquor store. I was 19, or I was 19. And so when I ran into the liquor store and stole some liquor and got arrested for that, I was charged with burglary in the second degree, which I was completely blown away. I couldn't believe it. And so from September until November, actually Halloween, I had been arrested and charged with 3 counts of burglary in the second degree, theft 1, and 2 theft 2 charges. So 4 felonies and 2 misdemeanors. Been in Oregon for 2 months. Spent my birthday in jail, and I had felony charges in 2 counties, Josephine and Jackson County. And I was, in California, I thought I'm same laws in Oregon. That's what I thought. And so I was like, I'm done, and I ended up getting a slap on the wrist. I got 64 days in jail and 18 months probation. Got out of jail and tried to stay good, but what happened was I moved to Rogue River, Weimar, and met somebody who was very deep into dealing methamphetamine at the time, and I started getting large quantities of methamphetamine for really cheap. And so now I have an endless supply of drugs. I had a connection for firearms that were being trafficked from, or brought up here from San Francisco, and so then I had the gun connection, and my dealer at the time had the drug connection, and felt like a good mix. So in that time, now I'm not just using, I'm distributing and selling to people, and what comes with that is more feelings of I have power. I'm accepted. People rely on me now. I'm important to people, and that was the dope, convincing me that these people needed me, and if they weren't buying it from me, then they were buying it from somebody else, and I couldn't accept that. I needed them just as much as they needed me, because I had no self-esteem. I didn't love myself, didn't know how to love myself, and the only way that I felt any kind of importance or okay with myself was either getting attention from women or getting attention from people buying drugs. So I've been in Weimar for about 1.5 years now, and my girlfriend and I at the time were supposed to have a baby. That didn't work out, and I felt betrayed, and I had a lot of feelings, and I didn't know how to process my feelings or express them in a healthy way. So I convinced another kid that I was with to steal his mom's car, drive out to her parents' house in the middle of the night while they were all sleeping, and take all their guns while they were home. And so I did that, and took a bunch of checks, committed a bunch of forgeries and things like that. And eventually Jackson County Sheriff showed up at the house. It's a red house right next to Rogue River Middle School, right there, right in Rogue River. And so they showed up at the house and came upstairs and had a duffel bag full of ammunition and 5 guns. I'm already a convicted felon. And so, now I'm like, okay, I'm looking at felon possession firearm. In California, those carry different penalties than they do here. Looking at burglary in the first degree, there's people in the home, so it's got a home invasion. And, got caught with a bunch of stolen checks and things, credit cards and other things like that. I went to jail, and that was it. And even then, I still was, calling my victim and trying to get them not to give a statement against me, and all that was used against me. I had to learn the hard way. The statement that goes, everything you say will be used against you in the court of law. I had to learn that the hard way. But it was a good lesson to learn, and so I went to prison for 19 months because I had 3 other prior property crimes. Now a fourth one. They give me a mandatory minimum sentence, 19 months in prison, with options for programs. And I was scared. The longest time I had ever done in jail ever was 64 days. I'd never been arrested as a juvenile, never been to jail as a juvenile. And now I'm 20 years old and I'm going to prison. And, I thought for sure on 19 months, I'll go to like some sweet minimum prison. I had been hearing all these wonderful stories about Mill Creek and how they don't have fences and all this wonderful stuff. And I did not understand at the time that a burglary in the first degree takes away my eligibility to be minimum custody. And I went to Oregon State Penitentiary. And I was scared to death. But at the same time, I had felt like I finally made it. The whole time in the back of my head, I was thinking, maybe if I do all this stuff and prove, that I can be this hardened criminal, that my dad will accept me, right? Because that's what he was at the time. And prison was a good experience for me. It was also a negative experience for me. I was offered Powder River Correctional Program out there in Baker City. But at the time, my criminal thinking was, you don't talk to the police, you don't tell on people, you don't do this, you don't do that. And there was this thing that everybody was doing that was called holding people accountable. And I had to shake somebody's hand, look them in the eye, and hold them accountable for certain things. And I was not comfortable with that at the time. And so I refused to do the program, and I went to Snake River, and that was it. I finished my sentence. I did most of my term at Snake River, and then I went to OSCI in 2005 to finish my term in prison. And I got out November 5th, 2005. I did 19 months in prison, and I had a 36-month parole tail that I took almost in 8 years to finish. So I had this amazing PO named Dan Schramm, and a lot of people know Mr. Dan Schramm, and I got to say, the time that I had with him, he never gave me a sanction that I didn't have coming. He was fair with me, and I appreciate that of him. He never gave up on me. He tried to get me to engage in these services. He knew that I was using. I did not stay clean when I got out of prison. I continued to go down that road, and in fact, prison taught me how to commit new crimes. It was like going to a university, really. A lot of times people graduate from high school, they go off to college, and they get themselves an education. I dropped out of high school, got my GED, and went to prison and got myself an education, a different kind of education. And so when I got out of prison, I met my wife on November 16th, 2005. I was out for 12 days. And she had just turned 18. She went to school with my sister. A month later, we were pregnant with our firstborn, Christopher. And, I'd like to say that I did the right thing, got a job, and did everything that I was supposed to do, but I didn't. I cheated on her. I lied to her. I emotionally and verbally abused her. I continued to use substances while she was pregnant. I made her believe that I was using drugs for her. That was the sickness that I was putting in her head, was that because she couldn't use drugs, I had to use twice as many drugs to make it fair. That was my manipulation in the way that I was, and it drove her crazy. And the day that my son was born, I was getting high in the bathroom of the hospital while she was in labor. At Grants Pass Hospital, and I continued to use. I continued to go in and out of jail. I spent a lot of time in Josephine County Jail on sanctions, and missed out on a lot of my kids' lives. In that time, Ashley got pregnant with Emma, and while she was pregnant with Emma, she had had enough, and she left me for 2 years. And was the best thing that she could have done, because by now I've started using drugs in IV, because smoking and doing lines of meth wasn't happening for me anymore. So I started shooting up. And what comes with that is committing more crime. I was very much addicted to the lifestyle that comes with all of it. Running from the police, hiding in the creek while the cops are looking for me with the dogs, all of that, all of it. I loved it. It was a rush for me, and it made me feel like I had status, like I was somebody, and really I was just a lame. To tell you the truth, I was a terrible person. I hurt the people that loved me the most, and I really did. I embarrassed my family. I robbed my grandma and grandpa's house multiple times. I stole from them multiple times. And my dad and my stepmom were are still members of the First Christian Church right there on 4th and H. And people would come in with a newspaper, and I'd be on the front page of the paper, getting busted by Mr. Lighty, and and so, jail became easy for me. I looked at it as I get 3 hots in a cot. I'm getting free meals and a place to stay long enough so that I can get healthy. And I have amazing butlers in police uniforms that come and open the door for me and bring me my food and bring me my mail and come and pick up my dirty clothes and bring me new clean clothes. And the way that I had turned it into, it wasn't like going to jail. It was like I had all these servants that were the guards, and I didn't have to have any responsibilities, and it was easy for me to do jail. But what happened was, Ashley and I got back together in 2010, and we were driving from Roseburg to Medford to Grants Pass to Brookings, and we were stealing things from stores, merchandise, to trade for drugs. You can only do that so many times before you get caught. And so we happened to get caught at Target in Medford, and there was a big black trash bag full of needles that I had got from the Grants Pass Needle Exchange. There was a gun under the seat. There was methamphetamine in the car. There was Pyrex tubing in the car, and my daughter was in the car, and there was meth in the car seat with her. I actually hid under a pile of dirty clothes for 2 hours while the police were searching through the van before they found me. Once they found me, I became the focus of all their attention. It was discovered that I had an active warrant for absconding from my post-prison in Grants Pass, and I went to jail. And the next day, while I was in jail, I got a notice saying that child welfare had stepped in and removed my daughter from my wife's care. Ashley and I weren't married at the time. My wife's name is Ashley. We weren't married at the time, but that was our first, that was the moment that I had first discovered that my children had been taken away from me. And that was devastating. In jail, I was removed from my mom's care when I was 1 year old in California and placed in relative foster care. And so I had always told myself that if it came to choosing my kids or drugs, I would choose my kids. So I was given an opportunity in Medford to sign into this program called Community Family Court. I had done drug court in Josephine County and was terminated maybe 3 months into it because I was continuing to use. But this time, Community Family Court was not only were they offering me an intensive treatment program, but I was also offered housing to go and live with my children while I attended treatment. So I could have my kids with me while I went to treatment. And I would like to say that I did everything right. I did not do everything right. As a matter of fact, the judge that was my family court judge is here. I spent 27 months that first time in family court, which was an 18-month program. I went to jail many times. But what happened was I was given an opportunity to get things off my chest. A lot of times when you go to jail, when the police arrest you, or when a judge sentences you to jail, or when a drug and alcohol counselor has to make a report on you, you think, man, there's things that I sure would really like to say to them if they were sitting in front of me. Family court gave me that opportunity. I was able to say things like, you're not doing anything to me but sending me on vacation. I'm going to jail to kick it with all my homeboys, right? And that was the criminal side of my disease. And so I went to the DADS program, participating in smuggling drugs into the DADS program and getting people loaded while they were in residential treatment. And I was put in jail for that. I actually was put in jail the day that my son, Brendon Jr., was born. His name is Dubbers, is what I call him, because calling him Brendon feels like I'm talking to myself. So he was born September 20th, 2011. I was in the DADS program when he was born. I got to be in the room while he was born. I had maybe 2 days clean. And I got to hold him. I got to cut his umbilical cord. And then I had to sit in my grandma's car while she drove me from Providence Hospital over to family court so that I can go to jail. That was the longest car ride in my life. My grandma drove 5 miles an hour and lectured me the whole time. And it was also the first time I had ever walked in and willingly turned myself in. I stayed clean after that. I completed the DADS program. I did everything right. I engaged in domestic violence groups. I completed treatment. I got a job, and I managed to get a year clean, and I graduated family court. And I saw the potential that I could have if I continued to stay on this path. I did not continue to stay on the path. As soon as I got out of family court, I was high, and DHS was at my house right away. I lived at Stephen Street Apartments, which is second chance housing in Medford. And DHS came, and they were, we want to talk to you and your significant other, Ashley, and we still weren't married. Now we have 3 children. And we panicked. I have never seen anybody pack a 3-bedroom house into a U-Haul. And then, so I packed that house so fast, and then thought maybe I shouldn't move, and unpacked the truck and put everything back in my house. And I did that 3 times before we finally decided we're going to move. So we ran back to Grants Pass, moved in with Ashley's grandma, and DHS said, okay, well, she's a safety service provider, we'll leave you alone. And so that was in December of 2012. And I stayed clean living with her for about 8 months. And then in July, I relapsed in Grants Pass. And so I told my dad, I had relapsed. By now, my dad's clean. He's a truck driver. He's doing really good. He's found God. He's involved in the church. He's encouraging me to make positive changes in my life. I wasn't trying to hear it at that time. I was like, you don't know what you're talking about, and you might have found God. You might have done this, but that doesn't have anything to do with me. And that was the attitude that I had. The last time I saw my dad face to face, I told him that I had relapsed. And the last thing he said to me to my face was that he was disappointed in me, and that I let him down. So he left and went on the road. He was, like I said, he was a truck driver. About 3 days later, he called me up and told me that, he was disappointed, but that he loved me, and that he wanted to know if I wanted to go on the road with him, because I had been at that time looking at becoming a truck driver. And I was like, yeah, sure. And so he was on his way up to pick me up, and he made it to Sacramento, and he had a heart attack in his truck, and he died. And so that was August 3rd, 2013. And when the pastor told me that my dad had died, I told him I'm going to go get high now. And I tried to kill myself. I tried to crash my car into a telephone pole. And at the last minute, I pulled away. And that was it. I was so wrapped up in the grief of, I'm the oldest, and my dad had been telling me, when I'm gone, like, you have to take the lead. You have to lead your brothers and your sister, and make sure that everybody's okay, and take care of grandma and grandpa and all this stuff. And I wasn't ready for any of that. Um, he was 50 years old when he died. So I had now the weight of everything falling on me, and I chose to use rather than deal with it. And I ran away from my problems. And what happened was, on Dubber's second birthday, September 20th, 2013, child welfare had been coming to my house. They had been knocking on my door, and I had refused to let them in. By now, I know my rights. So I was telling them, you guys aren't coming in. You go back and read my file. I was being really arrogant and telling them, you don't know who I am, and all this stupid stuff. And so we dropped our kids off at Ashley's grandma's house so that they can have a birthday party for Dubbers. It was his second birthday. And right after we dropped him off, DHS called and said, if you go back to the house, we're going to have you arrested. You can't, we have a protective order against your kids, or, against you for your kids. And so the way I look at it, and the way I explain it to people, is that I abandoned my children on my son's second birthday and did not come back to get them for 6 months, because that's the way it was to my kids. Mom and dad dropped us off and didn't come back. We were offered treatment, and Rebecca Peterson came on, and she was my wife's attorney, and I had Claudia Brown, and I'm taking it to trial. I'm gung-ho. We're fighting this. You guys don't have nothing on me. Man, I was wrong, but you know what? Looking back, like I'm glad that I took my case to trial, because the experience that I went through, the things that Ashley and I had to go through, the hole that we had to dig ourselves into in order to realize that what are we doing, And I went from living in a 2-bedroom apartment across the street from Bridge Street Market to a closet on Leonard Road. Like, we literally lived in a closet where you put your brooms and mops and stuff. And I was selling heroin to support my meth habit. By the way, I quit doing heroin in 2009, in January of 2009. So January that just passed was 12 years I've been off of heroin. But I sold it so that I could support my meth habit. Heroin's worth twice as much as meth, so I can do twice as much meth for half the price. That was my thinking. The problem was I didn't have a job, so I was convincing people to front me drugs, and then I was doing all the drugs, and then I'm borrowing drugs from somebody else so that I can pay this person. And it was I was constantly in trouble with people because I owed people money. So 6 months go by, kids are in relative foster care, fighting my case, and comes time to go to trial. And I had spent all night long the night before my trial shooting dope and meth. That's dope to me, methamphetamine. And so then I go to my trial, and I'm sitting in court, and court is really boring. I've actually got to sit in on jury duty since that day, and I struggled to stay awake. But I struggled to stay awake in my own trial while my wife was up testifying that we weren't getting loaded. And what happened was I fell asleep with my arm outstretched like this, and the judge could see that I had track marks going from my wrist all the way up to my shoulder. So then it was obvious, I'm doing drugs. So we lost our trial, but I consider it a win because the things that we were guilty of, we were held accountable for. The things that we were not guilty of were dismissed. And the majority of the things we were not guilty of, and they were dismissed. We were found that we were held accountable for 3 of the allegations. I think there was 20 allegations against us. We were held accountable for 3 of them. We went back to treatment in Medford. Once we lost our trial, then it was like, okay, we need to buckle down. We need to do something. My kids wouldn't even talk to me. I would go to visits at Family Solutions. I had to shoot up in the parking lot just to walk into the building so that I can see my kids for an hour. And then Dubbers and I were super connected before he was removed. And we had this huge bond, and he would have to be drug away screaming and crying. And so then the guilt from that on top, coupled with the guilt and shame that I was feeling, and the remorse of my dad passing away, I would have to shoot up at me as soon as I left the building. I couldn't even make it out of the building before I was already ready to get high again, so that I can function without completely losing it. So we begged to come back to treatment, and we did. We came back, and I signed back into family court, really for no reason. I had no reason to join family court again. I felt like at the time we had manipulated our way through the program the first time, and I wanted to show everybody that we can do it right. And so we signed back into family court, and we proved to everybody, including ourselves, that we can do it right. I was in family court for 12 months. Family court is an amazing program. I believe that it should be in every county in this state, because it helped give me my life back. And I made it through family court. No relapses, no sanctions, no nothing. I graduated treatment on time. On June 9th, 2015, went to court in child welfare and grants pass dismissed the wardship on my children. Went to court, and I had family court that day in Medford. So we go to court in Grants Pass 9 a.m., get our case dismissed, go to court in Medford at 2, successfully completed family court, went to the hospital that night and had our son Joseph, who has never been DHS involved. He's never seen his parents loaded. He's never spent a night away from us. That's my recovery baby. You ask anybody and they'll tell you that Joseph is Brendon's baby. That's my kid, and I love him to death. I love all my children, and I get super emotional talking about it, because if it wasn't for child welfare, I would be dead, and I believe that 100%. I was offered programs. The programs were there. I didn't take them seriously. Child welfare stepped in and said, you want to keep doing that? Fine, but you can't. You have to find something else for your kids. And that was the moment for me. It was that moment, and I'm so grateful for child welfare coming in, rescuing my family, that I wanted to give back. I wanted to be part of that. I want to change the culture. I want to change the perception and the way people view child welfare. People, when I was out there, people were telling me, "Oh, DHS is selling your kids. They're getting bonuses for all these removals. They're trafficking." It's all garbage. None of it's true. It's like taking legal advice from somebody who's sharing a cell with you. You know what I mean? Like, why am I taking advice from you? You're in jail. It's the same thing. So I got this opportunity from my DHS worker, Fraka Sandys, told me that there's this amazing program called the Parent Mentor Program at the Family Nurturing Center in Medford. And she said, "I think you'd be great for it." And so I had tried to work for OnTrack, and they told me that I would never work in this field because of my criminal record. But I had made a choice that I was going to be honest about everything. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say I'm not a felon. I am a felon. If you ask me about my circumstances, I'm going to tell you the truth. So I went into this interview and I told the truth. And they said, "Do you have any history with selling drugs?" I said, "Yeah, I do." "Tell me about your criminal record." I told them the truth. And they hired me. I actually did not pass the background check for this job, which is fine, because today I have those felonies expunged. And even the Class A felony conviction, I got that expunged too after I was denied a pardon by Kate Brown. I still got that off my record. And it absolutely can be done. 10 years goes by really fast when you're living a good life. Before I knew it, 10 years was like, oh, all of a sudden I've got 10 years of staying out of trouble. I haven't been to jail since the day Dubbers was born, and now I'm eligible to have my felonies expunged. And I jumped on it, So I get to work with families that are child welfare involved, like I was. I get to mentor dads who are struggling with substance use disorder and drugs, like I was. And I get to help them try to find a better way to live. and hopefully have their children back. Sometimes there's times where I've had to work with a client to help them make the decision to guardian out their children or to do adoption, and that's a tough decision to make. But that's something that I'm going to walk through the process with my families every step of the way. I've been through there. I've walked in their shoes. I've been through what they're going through, and I'm living proof that you can change. I was convinced that I was going to die in the gutter with a needle in my arm, and today I don't live that life, and I'm just super grateful. I understand that we got about 15 minutes till it's 8, so I'm going to stop now and give people an opportunity if they want to ask any questions. By the way, one more thing. My wife and I have the same clean date. We've been clean since March 6, 2014. We're actually going to spend our 7-year birthday in Hawaii this year. So, yeah, we'll be thinking of everybody celebrating our 7 years from Maui.
Awesome, Brendon. Thank you for that story. It sounds like you could keep going and tell us about the amazing last 7 years you've had. But maybe I'll open it up for questions and comments here in a second. But can you maybe just tell us a couple of things that you've been doing in recent years to what keeps you from going back? What keeps you strong in recovery?
Yeah, so there's a saying, I think it's by Tony Robbins. I think that's who it is, but it goes, change happens when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change, right? So it became harder for me to live in that life than it is to live in this life. And I tell that to people all the time. And, my mom back in the day when I would relapse, she would say, "Oh, you're taking the easy way out." It's hard to live in that life. It is hard to live in that life, constantly looking over your shoulder. Is Archie Lighty behind me? Is Shram gonna pop out from the alley and bust me? Is Darren Calvert going to be there to get me? I was constantly stressed out. I don't worry about that anymore. I have a driver's license. When a police officer gets behind me, I'm not freaking out and ready to throw stuff out the window. And so it became harder for me to live that life. And the way that I maintain it is a little different than, traditionally. A lot of times people go to meetings, they work the steps, they work with a sponsor, they become spiritual, and all that's great. That didn't really help me. It didn't really work for me, and I might not have tried it hard enough or given it enough of an opportunity to get through to me. But I'm strict about self-care. I do everything with my family. We go on family outings all the time. I'm in Las Vegas 2-3 times a year with my kids and my wife. My mother lives down there. We're going to the zoo. We're going to the coast. We go camping. We go fishing. We're watching. I take my boys. My boys and I have been to every Marvel movie in theater. We've seen every one. We watch all the Star Wars movies. My daughter and I are big time Harry Potter fans. So I do things with my family that I didn't have as a kid to do with my family, and I didn't do in my addiction. And I try every day to stay in this life. I gave my addiction every ounce of my effort. And so the way I look at it is I owe it to myself to give my recovery every ounce of effort, because I tried hard to live in that life and it didn't work. And so I'm gonna work on it today and try hard to live in this life. And honestly, I like the person I am today better than that person before. So.
Well, thanks so much for that. I feel blessed that you've taken an hour or two out of your family life this evening to share your story. So at this point, anybody who's on the line that has a comment or a question, feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question or your comment.
I'm so proud of you, Brendon, and it's an honor to be working with you and see how far you've come. And your story is just amazing, and I really appreciate you sharing that tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel blessed. I really do.
Brendon, I know you already know this, but in my job, it's really easy to, you know, get cynical and feel hopeless. And you and your family are one of the cases I think of when I really feel like, what's the use? Or I feel like a situation is hopeless, or I feel like giving up on one of my people, because the odds were not with you, and you had a hard road, and I knew that you wanted to do right by your family, and it looked really grim. And you know, here you are, and it's a real boost for me every time I see you in action with the other dads, helping them and giving them hope. And it's it has a ripple effect for the people around you.
Thank you. And thank you for being part of my journey. I mean, you were my first attorney in my first criminal case. You represented us in our DHS case. You're very much a part of my story in my journey. And so I really appreciate you. So thank you.
Thanks.
Just want to say good job, Brendon. You did great, and I'm proud of you.
I thought that was you, Crystal. Thanks. It only says Crystal W, and your picture's in red, so I wasn't sure if it was you, but I thought that was you. Yeah.
Yeah, me. Got to be here to support my teammate.
Yeah, appreciate it. Crystal's one of our parent mentors with the Family Nurturing Center. She's actually one of our success stories in the parent mentor program. So appreciate you being here, Crystal. Thank you.
Can't wait to hear your story, Crystal.
Yeah.
I love sharing my story. So anytime, Leah, anytime.
Yeah. Everybody's speechless.
Brendon, I did have one question about an earlier part of your story. When you first went to prison in Oregon, I think you said it was in Baker, but I was caught a little bit by surprise when you said that you kind of learn a little bit more in prison how to be a criminal. You said it was kind of like a university for you, and it just kind of caught me by surprise, because I would have thought that 19 months would have been enough time to maybe change somebody's mind. But how did that happen for you? How did that work out for you?
Well, I mean, I never went back to prison, but it taught me how to. I mean, I learned. When I went to prison, my co-defendant at the time gave statements against me, and there's no hard feelings today. I have no hard feelings about that. I was held accountable for something I did, and so what I learned in prison was you don't have crime partners. Don't because the more people that know what you're doing, the more chances of them giving statements against you. So that was a huge lesson that I learned. I also learned how to survive. I learned there's a lot of things. I mean, people are smart in prison. You have nothing but time to really educate yourself and learn how to do things. I learned how to light a cigarette with a battery. I learned how to play pinochle. I learned how to get away with things. I learned how to cut dope. I learned a lot of stuff while I was in there. I learned survival skills. Prison was not fun. I did not like it, but it was a good experience for me, and it was a good lesson to teach me. And honestly, today I'm attending school in the University of Phoenix. I'm a straight A student because of the education, the life experiences that I have. I don't even have to open the book to write these papers, and I'm going off my life experience and turning in A papers. I got a 4.0 GPA in 2020. I made the dean's list. I'm scheduled to graduate a year and a half early. All that is because of the experiences that I went through my addiction, through my criminal life, and while I was in prison. And so I'm grateful for those experiences. And OSP was actually the first one. Well, Coffee Creek was the first prison I went to, and then Oregon State Penitentiary in Salem, and then Powder River. Yeah, I had wild experiences in those 4 institutions that I was in.
Well, congratulations. I feel like I would almost want to hear more about the last 6-7 years than some of the rest. But you told your story in an amazing way. Is there anybody else on the line that wants to make a comment or has a question? Nancy, you're there. You want to say anything?
No, just thank you. Just a great big thank you, Brendon. I really appreciate your telling your story. It helps all of us understand everything just a little bit better. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for everything that you all are doing to bring awareness, and you're actually helping to reduce the stigma that comes with this. You know, I grew up with that stigma. Once you start doing drugs, your life is terrible. This is your brain on drugs. Once you're a felon, you'll never amount to anything. I have a wonderful life today. I have wonderful kids. I have an amazing wife. I have amazing family at work and I work for an amazing program. All of that stuff. If I would have allowed that stigma to continue to be a barrier in my life, I wouldn't have any of that. And so the work that you guys are all doing to reduce that stigma is commendable, and I couldn't applaud you enough for that. It takes us all. It takes a village to raise a child. It's the same thing with substance use disorder. We're all feeling it.
That's right.
So thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thanks, Nancy. I thought I'd put her on the spot. She is one of our founders of this organization, and so she's been a big part of our success over the years. Anybody else? Comments or questions for anybody else? All right. Well, we almost hit the 1 hour mark to the minute here. So, all right. Well, we'll call it a night. And thanks again, Brendon. I'll be in touch over email. We'll get you one of these Sharp Be Strong shirts.
Yeah.
In whatever size you need, and we'll even send one or two to your for your family members if you like. So I'll be in touch over email. And again, you can check out what we're all about and what we're doing, and one of the major projects that we're trying to do now as a nonprofit organization at grace-roots.org. You can also check us out on Facebook, and these are going very well. It's a very convenient way for people to tell their story, and we can document stories and give people an opportunity to watch them on YouTube after we record them. And so we're going to keep doing these on the second Thursday of each month, and we hope you all will join us again next month. So have a good evening, and thanks again, Brendon. Great story and great job.
Thank you.